This is Limelight America. Here's your host, Michael Drew Shaw.
Thank you, Lynette, and welcome to Limelight America, where we present one-on-one personal conversations with interesting people from all walks of life. These up-close encounters with people of the fascinating and inspiring kind include business, entertainment, sports, and artistic entrepreneurs, scholars, role models, and philanthropists who impact the quality of life for us all. This is the true story of an entrepreneur named Beaver who made it big with pigs and bunnies. In 1984, Donald Beaver filled his wife's pantyhose with cat litter. Really, this is true. The snake-like device was wrapped around a leaky factory machine to act as a diaper. Mr. Beaver named it the Pig Absorbent Sock. From that prototype came the new pig line of environmental spill cleanup products. In 1991, Mr. Beaver won Business Week's Best New Industrial Product of the Year award for another cleaning device, an electrostatic dust cloth called the Dust Bunny. Like Casey Stengel used to say, if you don't believe me, you can look it up.
Fascinating people, up close and personal. This is Limelight America with Michael Drew Shaw.
Our guest today on Limelight America, Bob Brown, who entered the feature movie-making business in 1999 as co-founder and partner with writer, director, and actor Jeff Daniels, and managing partner of the Michigan-based feature film company Purple Rose Films. In 2000, Purple Rose Films produced its first feature, Escanaba in the Moonlight. Bob founded and manages the company's music publishing firm, Purple Rose Music. In 2001, Purple Rose produced their second feature, Super Sucker, winner of HBO's Comedy Arts Festival in 2002. In late 2004, Bob created Charity Island Pictures. Charity Island has completed two projects, Silent Scream, and most recently, they partnered with Senart Films on the heartwarming tale Bonneville, starring Jessica Lange, Kathy Bates, and Joan Allen. Charity Island currently has two more projects in development, The Bassmaster, which we'll talk about, the Brian Kirchel story, and Underestimating Jake. Welcome to Limelight America, Bob.
Thanks, Michael.
Who are you now currently? What are you doing with your life?
Well, I'm a man of many faces, but right now I am a feature film producer, and I've been concentrating in that area for probably almost 10 years now. So I make movies every day. That's what I do. I started in the business. It was just one of those circuitous things. I never envisioned myself as a filmmaker. And at the time I was 42 years old, so I was, I'd been around the block a few times at least from a business environment perspective. Once I did it, once I completed my first film, I knew that at long last I'd found my reason for being from a professional perspective. And I knew that Jeff Daniels was a Michigan resident. And I knew that Jeff had a theater company in his hometown of Chelsea, which is 20 minutes west of Ann Arbor.
Which is Purple Rose, correct?
Which is the Purple Rose Theater Company, correct. Jeff and I became buddies, and I just asked him one day, out of curiosity, is there anything you'd like to do besides act? And he said, well, yeah, I'd like to make a movie. I said, wow, that's really interesting. How do you make a movie? He goes, I don't have a clue. I've been in 25 or 30 movies, but I don't know how to make a movie. And I go, wow, that would really be fun. Well, why don't we do that together? Why don't you and I join forces, and we'll make a movie? And that's what really opened the door to our first film, which was based on a play that Jeff wrote called Escanaba in the Moonlight, which, has become this cult classic in the independent film world. Jeff and I were up in Escanaba, Michigan. We were shooting our first movie. So it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and Jeff and I were sharing an office, and I turned to him and I said, are you having a good time? And he turned to me and said, I'm having a ball, because this is the first time in my life that I've used what I believe is all of my creative ability. When you're an actor, you use creative ability. He had his bag of tricks. He knew how to deliver, and that's how he made his living. So he was having a great time, and I told him, Jeff, here's my problem. I want to do this again, and I want to do it quickly because I don't want Disney to come in and snap you up, and take you out of my life for the next 6 months or year on some big film. So, before we wrap here in Escanaba, I want to buy you off the market as a writer, and a director, and an actor, and so you need to tell me what that's going to take because I want to do another Jeff Daniels comedy right away. And so he was excited about that prospect as well, and we basically made the decision before we left Escanaba that this was just way too much fun. And at that point we didn't know whether Escanaba was going to work or whether it wasn't going to work, but we really felt that we were onto something, and that we were smart enough and hard enough working people that we could find a way to make it work. Just started to put together our second film, which was Super Sucker, which is a very quirky comedy again. And frankly, we struggled. Super Sucker was not accepted, didn't find a niche market that it served well, and after working very, very diligently and very hard and very committed, for 4 years or so, Jeff came to me and said, I don't know that I want to continue to make movies. Maybe I'm better suited to doing the theater stuff and then acting in films, as my profession, but the intensity and the work involved in the whole writing, directing, producing films, distributing films is more than I envisioned it to be, so I think I'm going to go back to my roots. So then I had to make the decision at that point in time if I wanted to continue in the business, and I did.
I know you pride yourself on the fact that I believe you told me that all but one of your films made money for you and your investors, and that's quite a track record when you consider the industry and for what it is. You're listening to Limelight America. We're talking with filmmaker Bob Brown, and we'll be right back.
This is Limelight America.
We're talking with Thaddeus Warrow, the author of Radicals and Visionaries. I have to believe you have a couple of favorites.
Growing up seeing I Love Lucy, I always considered Lucy to be a brilliant comedian and Desi just her straight man. Desi was not only an excellent businessman, but he was quite an innovator.
All right, you build companies to sell them. I started out with Chongqing Chinese Foods in 1944, and I sold to R.J. Reynolds Tobacco for $63 million in '67. I have 7 banks because I had to put the money somewhere.
Radio's most talked about talk show, Limelight America with Michael Drew Shaw.
We're visiting with filmmaker Bob Brown. I want to get to your next film. It's a powerful story. Tell us about Bassmaster, which you've been working on for a while now.
I was looking for stories that I felt had a niche market that I could serve. And a friend of mine walked in the door and said, have you ever heard of a guy whose name is Brian Kirchhoff? And I said, no, I've never heard of Brian Kirchhoff. Who is he? He said, well, it's basically, his story is basically the Cinderella sports story involving the professional bass fishing circuit. The bass fishing business is huge. I mean, it's second to NASCAR, and it's a $68 billion a year industry. And, more people in America fish than play golf and tennis combined. This one organization, BASS, which is the Bass Angler Sportsman Society, is the largest fishing organization in the world. And there's this story about a young man who had a God-given talent, and it was catching fish. And unfortunately, when God decided to bless him with this talent, he also decided to bang him up a little bit, and he suffered extremely from a social anxiety disorder. Painfully shy. Would not speak. But you got him on the water, and he was king of the hill. So the story of Brian Kirchhoff is that the World Series of bass fishing is called the Bassmasters Classic. And in 1993 and 94, there were 40 of the best anglers would compete, and the winner of the classic would be the king. He'd be the world's best fisherman. As he grew up, he was battling those demons within himself, but he was also becoming better and better, and as far as an angler was concerned. And in 1993, he actually qualifies. The BASS allows 5 amateur anglers to compete against the pros in the Classic every year. And they break the country into regions. So the winner of each region gets this opportunity. And Brian won for the Eastern region because he was living in Newtown, Connecticut at the time. So Brian comes along and he gets his chance to live his dream. And of course, because of the person that he is, he chokes under the pressure, and he actually finishes last, in 40th place. His hero, a multi-time winner, whose name is Rick Clunn, he finished 39th, and they have a chance meeting in the parking lot after Brian's devastated by his performance. And again, this is a true story. And they make this agreement that they're going to come back in 1994. Now, Rick is a pro. This is what he does. He's coming back to the 94 Classic. Brian's got to go out and compete against 25,000 other amateur anglers to win the right to come back. But he recognizes that, the job of becoming a champion is bigger than simply, the fish that you catch. So he sets about to make this personal transformation between 1993 and 94. And he does, with the help of his fiancée. He does. And he qualifies in 1994. And he comes back, and he comes from behind, and he wins. And he becomes the first and only amateur angler to ever win the Bassmasters Classic. Now, one of the demons that Brian fought his entire life was a lifelong fear of flying. He could not get on an airplane. He just couldn't do it. And unfortunately, when you win the Classic, you become the rock star in the industry. And they put you on an airplane, and they ship you around all over the country, and you do the dog and pony show on behalf of BASS and the industry as a whole. Well, tragically, 5 months after Brian wins his Classic, he's returning from a corporate speaking engagement in the Carolinas on an American Airlines commuter flight from Wrangler, which was his first corporate sponsor, and the plane goes down and he's killed. And at 24 years old, 5 months into his reign. And as a result of that tragedy, he becomes an icon in the industry. And so I bought the rights from his parents, and have spent the last 5 years crafting a story that is worthy. I mean, frankly, it's such a tragedy, and I feel such a strong responsibility to his mom and dad, and to his fiancée, and to his sister, that it's just taken a long time to get the story to where I believe will serve Brian's memory, but also the marketplace. And I'm really excited because it's by far the best screenplay that I've ever gotten my hands on and have developed, and I'm sure it'll be a classic movie that will live on and on and on and on.
Well, you have some good help on staff, as I recall. Your director is known for some pretty sparkling performances.
Yep, my director is Angelo Pizzo, who's a Bloomington, Indiana native, and Angelo is the writer, co-producer, and co-director for movies like his first movie was Hoosiers, and then he went on to make another sports classic called Rudy. And Angelo has that sensibility. He has that. Angelo has a way of acknowledging that we all want to be remembered, and we all do. I mean, to varying degrees, person to person. But everybody's fear on the face of the earth is that they get to the end of the road and they go, it doesn't matter that I was here. And so Angelo has this way of crafting stories and telling stories where he captures, the worthiness of every individual and every individual's plight, and as a result, he creates those genre Cinderella sports stories. He creates them very well. So Angelo's gonna, he's joined me on the team, and I'm going to shoot the movie in northern Michigan on Torch Lake, which is, according to National Geographic, the third most beautiful lake in the world. It's just been a project that I've been working very, very hard on, and I'm really looking forward to getting to the point where we turn on the cameras. And of course, with the legislation that I was very involved with here in Michigan, the incentive legislation, it's helped all filmmakers. It's helped us spark the creative industry here in the state, and all of us in the Midwest recognize how desperate we are to diversify our economy. In Michigan, with the help of the film incentives, we hope that we're creating an industry that will help us on many ways, but really be a spoke, in the wheel of economic recovery, so to speak.
Your daughters are, or at least one, is involved in the filmmaking business, and I know that the statement that you made earlier about feeling compelled to protect your daughters, so to speak, in a very competitive world. Interesting to learn quickly about where their paths have gone.
Well, it's really not fair because both of my daughters are very intelligent and extraordinarily hardworking and gorgeous. And you take a teenager in their formative years, and you bring them onto film sets, and I don't know what other direction they could have possibly gone in after they had that exposure. And frankly, the fact that I love what I do and I beat my alarm clock up, they figured out early on that in life it's about doing what your heart tells you to do. And also, when they were in their the formative years, going into high school, they would come home with the usual litany of issues and drama. And I can't tell you how many times I told them, I said, listen, you have to be true to yourself, because if you think it's hard being true to yourself, try being somebody you're not. Then you'll really understand the definition of hard. And you have to stay true to that, and stay true to that, and stay true to that. And that was the mantra that my wife and I were drumming into them all through their formative years. And so they both recognized early on that they want to be storytellers too, and so they both decided they would jump into the film industry. Both are graduates of Albion College. Randon will be 25 in June, and she graduated from Albion on a beautiful Saturday in May 3 years ago. And on Wednesday, she got in her car. The following Wednesday, she got in her car and she drove to L.A. Because if you wanted to work in the movie business, full time, you really had no other choice. You had to go to L.A. And she settled in L.A. and she got a job right away, and she's worked nonstop, for the past 3 years. Our second child, Mallory, she graduated from Albion early. Thank you, Mallory. Your mom and dad, thank you very much for finishing ahead of time. And but because we had passed the legislation in Michigan, we were attracting the feature film industry to Michigan, and so Mallory was able to come to work for me, but shortly thereafter, she had an opportunity to jump on a major feature film.
Bob, it's been a pleasure. I've had the honor of knowing you and getting to know you pretty well, and now I've had a chance through Limelight America to share that relationship with some people. Thank you for being with us. It's been a real pleasure, and good luck with Bassmaster.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it.
Jim Henson was a dream warrior who refused to stick with the status quo. Rejected by American television, he syndicated his work via Britain's ACC group. His innovations connected new technology with the ancient art of puppetry and attracted a weekly audience of 235 million viewers at its peak. The biggest names in show business vied for guest appearances. Stars like Bob Hope, Steve Martin, and Rudolph Nureyev, who danced Swine Lake with Miss Piggy. U.S. network executives had said the Muppet Show was too child-oriented when they had turned Jim Henson away. The moral to this story is never give up. Believe in yourself no matter what the experts say. Playboy was not Hugh Hefner's first magazine, but it's the one that led a sexual revolution in the 1960s and earned Hefner recognition as one of America's most astute entrepreneurs. Ironically, as the bar on social acceptability was lowered, Hefner saw his empire nearly crumble in the 80s because of competition from lowbrow imitators like Penthouse and Hustler. Like most dream warriors, Hugh Hefner began pursuing his dream as a child by writing mystery stories and drawing cartoons. His first publishing effort at age 16 was called Shudder, with a comic strip and movie reviews, a members-only publication with annual dues of just 5 cents. He published his first tabloid while still in high school, but it was a job at Esquire magazine in Chicago that inspired Hugh Hefner to create Playboy. With $600 and enough charm to convince his printer to give him credit, Hefner was on a mission to publish a magazine that would thumb its nose at all the rules. Though critics condemned him, they could not dispute his success. Wanting Playboy to be known for more than just photos, Hefner worked on improving the literary content. When Penthouse and Hustler hit the stands, Playboy came in a distant third because it wasn't graphic enough. The sexual revolution Playboy started in 1953 had backfired.
You're listening to Limelight America with Michael Drew Shaw.
The human adventure does, as I believe, have meaning and purpose. Henry Luce.
Henry Luce was undoubtedly the most influential journalistic innovator of the first half of the 20th century. As editor-in-chief of Time, he helped create a new form of journalism, inventing the news weekly and laying the groundwork for the modern mass print media. By the time he was 40, Luce had carved out an empire that included 3 wildly popular magazines, national radio programming, and newsreels that appeared every day in 8,000 movie theaters across America. At the height of his power, his words could sway government policy and mold public opinion. Luce was born in 1898 in China, where his father, a Presbyterian minister and missionary, headed a small college for Chinese converts to Christianity. Luce spent his entire childhood in China and, as a result, grew up with an idealized image of America as an unfinished masterpiece of democratic liberalism and capitalism. It was an image he would never fully abandon. Luce emerged from his youth with a deep sense of moral certainty, an unquenchable ambition, and limitless curiosity. He read voraciously and developed an almost obsessive attraction to travel. It was his thirst for knowledge and experience that helped determine the direction of his career in life. After graduating from Yale in 1920, Luce spent a year in England studying at Oxford before returning to the U.S., where he took a job as a reporter alongside fellow Yale alum Britton Haddon. While working together, the two drew plans for an idea they had first discussed at Yale, a new type of weekly magazine that wouldn't simply report the news, but would also interpret it for those who did not have the time, the energy, or the knowledge to interpret it for themselves. Sensing what would become the country's scarcest commodity, Luce named the magazine Time, and designed it to be read in less than an hour. "It'll never work," said other journalists, but the ambitious young man remained undaunted. He and Haddon amassed $86,000, and with a staff consisting only of themselves and 3 other full-time writers, they published the first issue of Time on March 3, 1923. Time quickly attracted a growing readership, doubling its circulation within 1 year. A major reason for the magazine's success was its uniqueness. Unlike other national periodicals such as Collier's and Scribner's, which tended to be more literary, Time was an urgent, news-driven appraisal of the week's events written in a distinctive style that featured brevity, brashness, and shock, and captured the imagination of the growing college-educated public. By 1928, Luce and Haddon were looking for new worlds to conquer and began working on a concept for a business magazine to be called Fortune. He insisted that his new publication be superbly researched and richly produced. To give Fortune more clout, he priced it $1 per issue, a lavish sum for a magazine at the time. But before the first issue could be published, Haddon died unexpectedly of blood poisoning in 1929. Luce was stunned, but he quickly pulled himself together and resumed work on Fortune, which first hit newsstands in February 1930, shortly after thousands of fortunes had instantly disappeared in the worst stock market crash in American history. Despite its unfortunate timing, Fortune was a success and made Luce an important figure on Wall Street. Luce continued to expand his empire by acquiring Architectural Forum, and he began producing The March of Time, a series of newsreels that were heralded as the most imaginative of the era. With Time established as the leader in the field of weekly journalism and Fortune boasting a readership that included some of the country's top business people, Luce turned his attention to photojournalism and introduced Life in 1936. With marvelous photographs, snappy captions, and stories ranging from the maudlin to the spectacular, Life became an instant phenomenon. Although its original print run of 466,000 copies was the largest first-issue printing in magazine publishing history, demand for the magazine quickly exceeded the supply, and copies sold at a premium. Within a year, Life circulation exceeded 1 million readers per week. At the end of the 1930s, Time Incorporated boasted 3 of the top-selling magazines in the country. But Luce had more than business on his mind. He could see the gathering storm in Europe, and through his magazines, he began to prepare an isolationist America for a world war he felt was inevitable. In the winter of 1941, he published his famous essay, The American Century, in which he argued that the United States could determine the outcome of the war, then build a free and orderly world after an Allied victory. The editorial, which ultimately reached tens of millions of Americans, sparked a fierce debate between internationalists and isolationists. But that debate became moot when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor and catapulted America into World War II. Time flourished during wartime, and at the end, it emerged as one of the largest and wealthiest publishing enterprises in the world. In 1954, hoping to profit from the population's search for leisure and pleasure, Luce launched the hugely successful Sports Illustrated. By the end of 1955, Time was earning revenues of more than $200 million a year and would continue to grow until Luce's retirement in 1964. At the time of Luce's death in 1967, Life circulation was 750 million, and Time had a circulation of 350 million. Today, Time and the competitors it spawned bear faint resemblance to the original, but they still owe a great debt to the founder of news magazine journalism. Henry Luce's vision of a magazine that would explain and interpret complex events for a broad audience led to news analysis as opposed to straightforward reporting, and it changed journalism forever. And here's a Luce addendum. Henry Luce is credited with innovating many of the techniques that have become standard journalistic practices. He was the first publisher to emphasize personalities in the news. In Time, he started the concept of group journalism by introducing the reporter, researcher, writer team.
Limelight America is produced by the LA Radio Network.